We're going to tip things off here with the NBA. Social media has infiltrated all levels of society, especially sports and sports media, right? However, for LeBron James, the noise has gotten too loud, and he's decided to unplug. I get it. LeBron made 2 posts yesterday on X. Let me read those to you. The first, simply saying amen to previous posts by Kevin Durant's longtime manager, Rich Kleinman, which read, quote, "With so much hate and negativity in the world today, it confuses me why some of the national sports media still thinks that the best way to cover sports is through negative takes. We can all acknowledge that sports is the last part of society that universally brings people together. So why can't the coverage do the same? It's only clickbait when you say it. When the platform is so big, you can make the change and allow us all an escape from real life negativity. I, for one, find it all a waste of breath. The Olympics and the JJ and Braun show was the future of what this can and should all be." LeBron then followed up that post, simply reading, "And with that said, I'll holler at y'all getting off social media for the time being. Y'all can take care." LeBron's announcement came one day after he said everybody on the internet called me a liar all the time when he said he was watching Dalton Connect's college games last year at Tennessee. All right, so a lot to unpack, Stephen A., and there's a lot of layers to this conversation. Do you believe, and hi, Wendy, do you believe that LeBron is right about social media?
I believe he's right. There's a lot of weak-ass people on social media. There's a lot of people that hide behind social media to spew and to spread and disseminate their venom. Point taken with both Rich Kleinman and himself. They are not wrong. They're just not complete. I would remind, and Wendy, I will say this to you. Last time I checked, there's former players that's in the media. There's former players that have their own podcasts. There's former players that are on shows like this and various other shows. And so when people talk about the national media, that annoys me. And I think that Rich Kleinman was incomplete with what he said. The fact of the matter is that you listen to him, you listen to what he said, you listen to LeBron and what he intimated, and there's this impression that it's the media, the media, the media. There's several layers to all of this that's not being told. Number one, what's your definition of negativity? If you shoot 2 for 20 and somebody said you played like hot garbage last night, is that negative? Was that factual? Because to me, it's only negative if you continue with that narrative as opposed to neglecting to point out the positive when they perform in a very positive fashion. If I'm celebrating you when you play well, but I'm pointing out when you play bad, that's just me covering the game. And by the way, there was a time long before social media arrived where you saw people, national and locally, getting into people's personal business. That's not what you see a lot of now. Actually, people, despite what social media, the impression it may give you, I can speak on behalf of myself and many people in the national media. There's a strong reluctance to touch on people's personal affairs. That's your business. Talking about the game and talking about what impacts the game and your performance is not getting into your personal life. But you have folks that will want you to avoid even talking about the game in a negative fashion because they're of this mindset that it would protect their brand, which gets us to another point. Yeah. You really have an agenda. Because what you want to do is make sure that, listen, excuse the analogy, Molly, but you've got a lot of people out there, Wendy, that literally will pass gas and want you to say it's perfume. Literally. In today's sports world. And that's where it becomes a bit egregious. So when you take that into consideration and you just label the national media in that regard without being specific about who you're talking about, that's a negative stigma that I think should be challenged. The other thing that I would say is what I piggybacked off of earlier. Folks in the media today also consist of former players. They're your brethren. They know the game. They've been inside their locker rooms. But you'll see players complaining about the media one minute, complaining about a former player another. If you're a present player that has a podcast or something, they'll complain about that too, which was why I said when I was talking about Kevin Durant a couple of weeks ago, who's allowed to talk about you? Who's allowed to talk about you? Because he's gotten at me, he's gotten at Kendrick Perkins, he's gotten at other people, he's gotten at fans, he's gotten at media members, he's gotten at folks on social media. Who's allowed to talk? But in the same breath, you want us to talk because it elevates the profile of the sport and the brand that you represent, and you get the profit off of that. So which one is it? All of these things come into consideration. I'll let Wendy go before I say more, but I just wanted to make the point that they're not wrong with what they're saying, but they're wrong with not being expansive and specific about it because you're stigmatizing an industry when it's an industry that includes former players and in some cases present players.
I just want to say something really quick, Stephen A. So you said define negativity. I would say define the media to that point. Who exactly are we talking about? Because when you talk about social media, absolutely it's a double-edged sword, but it's not just media, it's also fans as well, where you're receiving a lot of that vitriol.
The other thing really quick before you go, Wendy, Rich Kleiman, who I like and respect. I've known him for years. Did you say that tweet when Kevin Durant said what he said? That's your guy. Y'all are business partners. The boardroom, 35 Ventures. I mean, and listen, and I'm not casting aspersions on Kevin Durant, no matter what Kevin Durant said about me. Got love and respect. He's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. He is a treasure to the game of basketball and to the world of sports. I'm simply saying, to attack the point, did you say that when your guy has been negative? Because Kevin Durant has been negative from time to time. No, I didn't see that. I didn't see that tweet then.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing where I feel like Rich was totally right, though, is sports is the unique situation where it does galvanize people and bring the world together. So he's absolutely right about that point. Wendy?
Okay, so first off, I'll just put my reporter hat on right away. LeBron has had social media blackouts a handful of times over the years. He used to do it annually in the playoffs. So this isn't the first time he's done this. And the reason he did that in the playoffs was because of negativity. It really began after the first year in Miami when he would openly admit that he used to sit there during the finals and read social media. He, at times, would retweet racist stuff that people said to him on social media. And he's gone in social media blackouts before. Also, I don't know what the precipitating event was where he did this. This tweet from Rich Kleiman is 4 weeks old. You know, Rich tweeted this 4 weeks ago, and Rich has continued to tweet on social media since then.
But he retweeted it too, Wendy. He retweeted it too. I texted him a few minutes ago, and he retweeted it. He said, yes, it was from a month ago, but he retweeted it, yes.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out that Rich didn't say this.
Well, maybe the month ago was after Katie stuff. Go ahead, Wendy.
Well, I'm just saying, I just want to be clarifying that LeBron wasn't reacting to something that Rich said 2 days ago. It was a month ago, okay? I just think I need to point that out. The other thing I'll say is that both LeBron and Rich Kleiman run media companies, which you mentioned the boardroom, and LeBron runs Uninterrupted, that have used social media to promote and develop shows and gather content over the years. Okay, so I just want to say those things that I think is important. Now, speaking as somebody who's covered the NBA for 23 years, I do think that we have reached a point where in media, things are a little out of balance. And I would actually say that about the game of basketball in the NBA. I think we're a little out of balance. I think there's too many three-pointers, for example. I think the game is out of balance a little bit in that way. And so I do think the NBA could benefit from more storytelling like Rich is talking about here. But I also think that shows like this one help drive interest in the NBA. I just think we're a little out of balance. I have colleagues who are, cover NBA teams, and over the course of an NBA season, they will post 1,000 pieces of content that illustrate how much everything, written content, interviews, videos, and they will have one piece of content where a player makes a mistake get 12 million views.
Yeah.
And something that took a lot of work and nuance and storytelling might get literally 1/1,000th of that. And so if you see that, what are you going to do? Your incentive is set clear for you. There's focus on negativity sometimes because it drives the response. I also see players on benches, absolutely make fun of players who get dunked on or crossed over. Like, yes, 1 million fans are going to react to that, but the players on the sideline react to it too. When I came into the league, when a guy got crossed over, people didn't fall on the floor on the bench. It's a part of what's going on in society right now. I think we could all benefit as people who follow the NBA and in the NBA if we did go back to focusing on more storytelling than just focus on negativity. But the fans speak loudly every single day with their eyeballs that they like that negativity. And that's what causes the challenge. And that's what era we're in right now.
Definitely stories needed to be told, but they want to dictate who tells it. And they want to avoid other people who might have cachet, who might help that story resonate, who might help it reach a more expansive audience, even than they imagine. But they don't want to take advantage of the opportunity because you're salty about something that's so minute compared to the bigger issue that you had placed before your hands. But then they want to come out and say, what happened to the storytelling? That's their responsibility, too. You're Rich Kleiman in the boardroom. There's a lot that you have done, you will continue to do. I'm a fan, and I think they'll be continue to do it. LeBron James and Uninterrupted, there's nothing to talk about. We see what's going on and the exceptional work that they're doing. But there are people they could talk to. There are stories that could be told. There's a level of genuine truthfulness and honesty and objectivity that could be brought to the equation, but that's not what you want to do, because you might not like a particular person when their objective is the story, not you, and to tell those stories. So when you say there's more storytelling that could be told, yeah, who are people that are in ideal positions to tell those stories? Those very individuals that don't want to tell it unless they want to tell it to who they want to tell it to, as opposed to having folks standing in front of their face, objectively dissecting what they're saying about the story. That's far more important than anything they might be a bit salty about, and they pass on those opportunities. So when you talk about First Take, for example, you brought up First Take. Let's talk about First Take for a second. There's former athletes and present athletes that come on this show all the time. They're always welcome. Always welcome. We don't shy away from that. You got something you want to debate? Fine. You got something you want to promote? Fine. You got something you want to big up? Fine. We have no problem with that. But because somebody talked about you playing like trash in the playoffs when you did something you would openly admit you did later on, suddenly you don't want anything to do with them. You're persona non grata. I'm saying to you, there's a grown-up element to all of this that people don't gravitate to. And then they got cats in the podcast stratosphere, all right, that literally confirm and condone that kind of mentality until they're forced to speak truth to power about what's transpiring, and then the players themselves turn against them. And so when we look at this negativity and just say to national media, nah, that ain't good enough, because there's people, your brethren, former players, present players, with a microphone, with a camera, that got absolute carte blanche to speak truth to power, and they know what they're talking about, and then you challenge them because, not even because it's false, but because you said, nah, that's not something you say. That's not something you publicize. And they go after their own. So when we talk about national media, who's Rich Kleiman talking about? Who's LeBron James co-signing on with that? What are you talking about exactly? Give examples. We're all ears. We're all ears. But they won't do that. You know why? Because then you get challenged. And you're getting challenged on the level of consistency that you may be lacking with your argument. This is First Take, baby. I'm here all the time. Anytime, any place. They want the platform, let's go. Let's have
Do you
that discussion.
feel like that
They won't do it.
Stephen
They
A.,
won't
do
do
you
it.
feel like
we know that.
by their comments,
I'm sorry?
but with like Rich or LeBron, by their comments, do you feel like when they're referring to national media, they're specifically referring to First Take?
It's not just First Take. I mean, it's the national media. They are right about that. And I'm certainly not taking it personal because First Take is First Take. But when you're number one, that's the kind of stuff that happens, and it goes with it.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that I'm coming to the defense of the industry itself, because I'm saying if you have stories to tell and you want to tell it, people will listen and let you tell it. On far more occasions than not, sensitivity has been heightened to such a degree because there's so much money at stake that any little thing they'll overreact to, and they'll pick and choose who they want to and who they don't want to tell a story to, and then accuse you for not telling the story.
But Wendy, let me just clarify one thing. I think sometimes it's not just heightened level of sensitivity about your brand and dollars. Sometimes it's if it's attacking your character. And then I understand where people especially take that personally.
They should.
Well, that's old. That's as old as time itself. That's as old as the history of media. I mean, but this is why I talk about things being out of balance, because I do believe that it's shared on all those sides. Because, for example, now these days in the modern era, there is less access to players than there was 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
Some of the players have taken the access themselves and said, we're going to do it ourselves. But the less access to players means there's less access to storytelling. That is also on the league. The league has allowed less access to players to fester. There was more access to players 15, 20 years ago, and there was more storytelling 15, 20 years ago. There is a reason why that the NBA players are in their contracts, obligated to talk to the media. It's because that, on balance, helps the growth of the leagues. It helps tell stories. And look, LeBron's company has made hundreds of projects over the last 10 or 15 years, however long he's had it. He's had many documentaries covering many different things. I would argue, and maybe he would be able to say differently, he knows the figures, I don't. I would argue the most successful product that Uninterrupted has put out is The Shop, which is,
I agree with that.
Frankly, a show that is not too different from this show. The makeup is different, the production is different, the topics are a little bit more nuanced and more over time as opposed to in the moment. But it's the same. That was the most popular show, and that was the show that was on and got the most eyeballs. I believe. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's true. And so even players who have their own media companies who have control, Stephen A., they realize that sometimes shows like this are what people want. So I think the key for everybody involved, whether it's Rich Kleiman, who has a media company, represents Kevin Durant, whether it's LeBron, one of the biggest athletes on the planet, whether it's the league itself, whether it's us at ESPN or other partners, I do think we could all get things back into better balance where we do try to include more storytelling than just negativity.
Fair enough. I would tell you that they're more of a culprit than the national media because of what you highlighted, the absence of availability, which is something that they coveted. They like it that way. They go on social media. They have their own accounts. They have their own platforms. That's what they want. I tell people in the media all the time, don't sweat the fact that they got their own platforms. Don't sweat the fact that they've given you less access, because all they've done is make your job easier, because they're avoiding you. They're avoiding allowing you that level of accessibility, which gives you a license to pontificate further based off of what they say publicly. And that's on them. That's number one. Number two, though, I would say this to you. Let's be clear. Put Wendy back up. I want to see him when I say this. My brother, Wendy, I like The Shop. I think they've done a hell of a job. Pedro, Maverick, and the rest of the crew, nothing but love from me. But let me be very, very clear. It ain't like First Take. And I'm going to tell you why. Because there's very, very little resistance when LeBron opens his mouth about something. There's very little that challenges some of the things that he says, okay? And I can say that because I'll put myself on Front Street when Maverick or Rich have joked with me about coming on The Shop, because I do believe they were joking when they were saying that. I've said this to them, and I meant it from the bottom of my heart. I'll show up, name the time and place. Oh, by the way, no editing. Make sure that what I say is in there. You understand? Don't sit up there and edit me out and cut me out. Oh, no. Let's have that real conversation. I ain't never been invited. Ain't no accident. We know what time it is. See, people can talk all they want to, but at the end of the day, it comes down to that level of truth. And how truthful and authentic are you willing to have a conversation with? When Kleiman brought up JJ and LeBron, okay, that's fine. Y'all were talking pure basketball. We appreciate that. And basketball junkies should appreciate that. Excellent, excellent podcast with the both of them. You learn so much. Both of them are basketball savants as far as I'm concerned. But the world doesn't consist of savants. And the world ain't always interested in listening to savants be savants all the damn time. Sometimes they want stuff normalized. They want it to a degree where even though you're dissecting it with a fine-tooth comb and you're showing the world that you know what most don't, in the end, at some point in time, there's a bottom line factor that comes into the equation. What's the result? Are you going to win or are you going to lose? What's the real reason this happened? A lot of times they ain't going to dime out their teammates. They ain't going to dime out their coach. They ain't going to tell you how LeBron felt about Darvin Ham, for example, right? But we know that you were doing a podcast with JJ, and JJ ends up being the next coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. Well, if it walks like a duck, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it ain't a damn mongoose. You understand what I'm saying? We're allowed to say 1 + 1 = 2. People are going to deduce that no matter what they say is all I'm trying to say.
Go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah. When you say the bottom line, I want to go to the bottom line, okay? Tonight, there's a game between the Orlando Magic and the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yes.
When we watch that game as a fan, what you want to see is, what you want to know is, you want to know what players have beef with one another, what players have a rivalry with one another, but you also would like to know if the game gets to be a 30-point blowout about the Orlando Magic and the rookie who may have overcome some stuff. It's
Right.
the balance of all of it that would
Sure.
make things more healthy. You want to know that Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid are talking in the locker room together, and it also might be amazing to know about a rookie from the Orlando Magic or somebody who's overcome childhood cancer or something. And right now, one gets more focus than the other, but we need it all. That's my only point. That's the bottom line.
Hold on, Molly. We need it all. But we need it all. But in the same breath, you also need to feed the audience. The audience is telling you what it wants. We can't complain when the 11 o'clock news every night leads with some crime or whatever happened.
But Windy, you're 100% right, and it doesn't make it right in the clickbait and all of that. But it's a microcosm of where we are in society. In the cesspool of social media, you are 100% right, and we see it in the news, and it's why I can only watch it for so long because it's just so depressing.
But the point is that it's not the media. It's the audience. If the audience...
Well, yeah, he's right. These are feel-good stories. We'd love to... Stephen A., do you know how many times people have said, what do you want to do after First Take, Molly? I'd love to host a show about second chances. Every time I present that to an agent, they're like, no one's going to watch that. Right. No one cares. And that's
just
just
the audience.
Yeah, but it's still a problem.
Right, but the point is, it's a problem, but it has always been a problem. It's long before social media ain't when negativity sold. Negativity sold long before social media ever existed.
Everybody wants to see the car crash.
Everybody wants to see the car crash.
Look at reality TV.
Not to sound like an old man, but I think the balance is off from where it used to be. Even though that's always been true. I think the balance is off.
The balance is off where it used to be because of the advent of social media and the fact that everybody has a voice, and now you're hearing what everyone was thinking and showing in the ratings department before social media ever came along. So I get where you're coming from. But if a player, for example, when you're watching basketball, there's a lot of good stories on various teams throughout the NBA. Who you paying to see? You walking through the turnstile. Why is LeBron so influential? Why does he have 52 million social media followers on X or 100 million on Instagram or something like that? Why? Because he's LeBron. Everybody ain't him. Everybody ain't KD. Everybody ain't Steph Curry. So the audience is telling you what you want, and how you monetize things in this world is by paying attention to what the audience tells you they want.
And Windy, to your point of how you feel like it's changed, and you've been covering sports for quite a bit of time, I'm curious if it's not just social media, but it's also that everybody has a microphone, that there's so many more voices, and that's part of what's swaying it beyond the national media as well. All right, a lot of meat on the bone, interesting conversations. Thanks to Rich Kleinman for spurring it.
I'm on fire. It's NBA,